And
When Elon Musk, started, his SpaceX, he didn't know how to land a rocket. He crashed, hundreds of them, or maybe not hundreds, but quite a few of them. Could have been hundreds, I don't know. And so he crashed a lot of rockets. But in that process, it was a learning curve. And most people thought he was crazy. You're really going to go land a rocket after it shot into space? It's nuts, and it's never been done before. Perfect. He's just so good at what he does. And that makes me look to the eye and the prize of where I want to get to. So, guys, this is live. This is the money. This is the mindset. This is the mentoring podcast. Today we have Ellen Tyler with us. Ellen, it's been a pleasure since the very beginning of meeting you. The first time we met, we sat down and we're supposed to go through, hey, what are we going to talk about? We ended up shooting the breeze for I don't even know how long. And I went, crap, we actually got to get some business done. And so then we ended up meeting a second time and really kind of diving deep into the realm of what you do. And I find it very interesting around, there's a whole, almost like, I'm going to use a bad word, but almost like a cultish following when it comes to Bob Proctor. And I want to talk about that and just get that right out of the way. So guys, we are going to be talking about Bob Proctor. We're going to be talking about sales. We're going to be talking about strategy. We're going to be talking about time management. We're going to be talking about mindset. So if that's not for you, go somewhere else. But you know what? If that is for you, then stay here, because I can tell you, I've been in the room with Bob Proctor when he was in Canada, and it was such an amazing experience, just such a lovely person. And he really treated everybody like an individual when he was in the room. He'd have a room, tons of people, but you'd go up and meet with him afterwards, and what a genuine human being. And so it was great to start that off. First of all, that's some of the framework around what we're going to talk about. But really, I want to kind of get into the first bit, which is talking about mindset. Now, mindset is one of those funny words. And usually when people say mindset, you kind of see them kind of roll away. They're like, yeah, boring. I just want to have tactics. I just want to have, how do I do things? How do you get somebody out of that idea that tactics are secondary to mindset?
Well, I think the elephant in the room for most, Steve, is that I don't think anyone even really understands mindset. It's a word. It's kind of like Kleenex. It's one of those words that you hear and you don't really understand. If we just really think about it, and that's the big word, is think. If we understand that what I'm thinking, what I thought 15 minutes ago, or what I thought yesterday is more important than anything. Because if I think about the conversation I'm having, that's your mindset. So the conversation you have when you get up in the morning, so you're like me and you have an overactive mind and it's already, chirping away. It's just to pay attention. What's the conversation going on? That's really mindset.
Yeah. And that, and it's funny because you're talking about, it's really kind of what you focus on. And I know you often emphasize how it shapes results based on your mindset. I mean, you've adopted 3 kids. You talked to me a little bit about that story, which I thought was just absolutely amazing. And that right there was very transformative. And when you think about it, it's transformative around mindset. How did that decision shift your perspective on mindset? And in turn, affects your coaching and your focus on revenue and focus on your client growth.
So at the base of that, first and foremost, I'm going to say anyone who adopts teenagers, people think I'm great. I go, actually, they're all girls, and you should, my husband should get the same for that, because teenage girls are teenage girls. That's all I'm going to say. But what I was able to experience because of that, and I always explain that the reason we were able to do that was, and you said his name in the beginning, and I always tell people I hired Bob Proctor long before he was Bob Proctor from the movie and all the other stuff that came after that. But that ability to change the lives of 3 girls and they would tell you, they would have been pregnant on the street, addict to anything and everything. But here's what I got to see. When you give somebody the opportunity to have just a place, it really is a place to settle and to actually discover that they can make choices rather than feeling like the choices were already made for them based on the environment that they were living in. That it's most likely impacted why and who I get to work with because of that. It's the impact they're going to have on the world, and it's the ripple effect. So when you think about it, it's not that we changed one life. Then this is the same for the type of people I get to help. It's that they're going to change the lives of the families they're part of. The youngest is a functional neurology chiropractor. I can't even tell you what that all means. But
well, it means that she's not on the street. That's what it means.
That
number one,
super smart. And she didn't even know chiropractors existed until they moved here. And she wants to cure migraines. Now, whether she does that or not, she's going to have an impact on the world around her. So that's why that has impacted what I get to do.
You know, there is a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, and he says, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits, and your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. I've seen that played as destiny as well as identity, you know, and if I want to translate that to what Bob said, you know, Bob says, you know, takes that into a little bit more of a practical sense of saying, you know, thoughts become things, and if you see it in your mind, you will hold it in your hand. Looking at that experience that you had with the adoption, highlight the power of the mindset in that. And how did you encourage those girls to go from where they were in that very tough situation to be able to reach the goals that they've had and the success that they've made in their lives?
So a little bit of backstory, and it's the power of focus and where you want to be, whether people want to call it prayer or visualizing or whatever. The oldest, Christiana, actually was over in Finland. They're from Latvia during the time that we were deciding, do we want to host? And she was praying every day for two things. One, to be adopted, and she wanted to visit America. And after we learned that, we said, you're pretty good at manifesting. You just didn't know you were going to be adopted in a foreign country and have to move here. It is, I mean, I have to think, because I always get asked this question, and I always say the groundwork had to be laid months and years before that. And this is really where we are products of our environment. My parents were always helping individuals. And it's not that you wake up one day and go, oh, I think I should adopt 3 children. It's not normal for anyone to really think that way. And so I would just say the path was kind of there. And then it's hard for anyone to imagine what goes on, whether they want to believe in quantum physics or mindset or prayer. All of it kind of works together. But that's really what was going on underneath the surface. She was praying really hard. We had no predisposition to not. We actually had thought about adopting 10 years earlier and just didn't for life reasons. That's how it works. And
so when you look at it, what you're saying is the prayer is almost, in essence, a manifestation mindset process.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Is, if you've ever met anyone who's really good either at the word manifesting, and again, that gets thrown out there, or not, or prayer, and it's the same thing. It's the ability to picture what you want and hold true to that picture. See, the only thing missing from the Gandhi quote, and this is where we're a little bit different, is it's hard to find where did he put in the feeling. Because if the feeling's missing, it's why somebody would say affirmations don't work if they're big on affirmations. You have to be able to see the future and what it feels like.
Explain that a little bit more to me.
So it's the ability. So let's say I want a new car. That's a pretty easy one for most people to accept. It's one thing to think about what the car looks like. It's another thing to go sit in the car, drive the car, take a picture, smell the new car smell. And then when you're picturing, because if you come home and visualize, you have all that in context. You know what it felt like, and it's that. So when I talk about the ability to feel it, a lot of people have a misunderstanding. They think our past behavior predicts our future, but it's really our future behavior predicts our future. It's that ability to be the person in the future that brings it faster.
Yeah. And I can definitely see that. I think, there's an old joke. It's what is it? There's two tents that are there and they're talking to each other. And it's like, the one's like saying to the other, he goes, I'm a teepee, I'm a wigwam, I'm a teepee, I'm a wigwam. And the other tent says, relax, you're two tents. And, and the idea around tense is some people really live in the past tense.
Yes.
And it's whatever they've done. And I see this happen a lot when somebody comes in as an interview and they talk about, what they did in university and they're 45 years old.
Yeah.
And the thing that goes through my head is like, if my wife would have brought something up that I did 20 years ago, like that would not resonate with me. Why does it work in the workplace? It should be, what did you do recently? What have you done? What is your goals? Where are you going? So you have the past tense people, and then you have the present tense people who, don't have it connected to the past or the future. And then you have the people who live in the future. And they're always pulling the present to the future. And so, one of the things that when people are doing is when they live in the future, there are a lot of times they're spending about like, they're envisioning where they want to go. They're manifesting it. They're thinking about it. They're setting goals. I know one of the things that you talk about is a lot of people sometimes shoot short. The idea is that when they're setting the goals, they're not seeing big enough, and therefore it's not drawing them in the way that they need to go. How do people go through the process of adopting those big, massive goals, especially if they're business goals, but also look at that and say, family is obviously important to you. So how do they look at balancing those big, audacious goals with their family life when they're doing the setting of them?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to unpack a little bit and then we'll go down different roads. So I'll answer the last part first and then go on to the goals. It's what we believe about work-life balance is what we experience. And so if we were growing up and our dad worked all the time, then that's what we're going to experience until we choose to change it, because that's just a decision. But there's lots of things tied around what we think we need to do to be successful. And if we saw parents work hard, then that is exactly what we think we have to do. So we'll leave that. We might come back and visit that. Let's talk about setting big goals, because I tell most anyone, and everybody wants to understand about goals. You have a filter in your head. And if somebody was in any context in a sales type position, they understand this, because you could ask me what I thought I was going to close and I would tell you to the penny. What happens when we start asking about what goal do you want, they don't realize, but that's going on in their head. It's like, I did this and this and this, and I did this last year and the year before, and this is what I normally grow. And they're going to spit out a number, and they think they're making it a big number for me. And then my common response is triple it. It's until they start understanding. Most individuals work with someone because they don't understand how to get clarity and clear around a goal, because we do limit ourselves. And until you experience it, I will say to most anyone, you're going to realize you could have shot for a bigger goal. But here's the great thing. You just get to do it again. Because when we get to that level, you might get to rest for a day or two, but then onward and upward. Pick a different one.
I was teaching jiu-jitsu this morning. I coach Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and we had a new fella who came in, and I met him yesterday at a real estate conference. And, I'm relentless when it comes to selling people to come to the gym, not because I profit off of it. It's a passion project of mine. I volunteer there, but he got in there in the morning, and the idea for him was just to make it through the class. And I'm like, you know what? It actually, that right there is, if he keeps that mentality for the next 10 years, the same mentality, I'm just going to make it through the class, just going to make it through the class, just going to make it through the class. 10 years from now, he's not only going to have achieved that milestone of just making it through the class, but doing that with intensity, with consistency. And the one quote that I heard recently, which came from Gary Keller, is he talks about intensity through consistency. It's not about doing one major thing. It's about doing one thing a major amount of times and going through that consistency. Do you see that as a theme for when you see people becoming successful?
I would add one layer to that, because a lot are looking for how to build the confidence. Because what you just said is that in that description, that person is going to gain confidence in what they can do. And confidence comes from keeping your promises. So you can view that as the consistency. Once they can hook onto that, they recognize everybody suffers from doubt and worry. I mean, I always tell this example. Everybody has highlight reels. Everybody has something they've done really well in the past that they can hook onto depending on what they're doing. And there was a time my dad loved to scuba dive, and we came back, moved from a state, and he said, oh, by the way, I signed you up and you have to swim the whole length of the Olympic pool underwater without coming up for a breath.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. Did I want to do that? No. When I was challenged to do it, did I? Of course I did. But it's when people don't fail. You either win or learn. So
Absolutely.
That consistency teaches them that they're doing both of that.
I always believe that somebody can win every single day that they have. And if they can win it by setting their goals in the morning and then attacking those goals, and then at the end of the day, reviewing it and saying, did they hit their goals? And the way that they win if they don't hit every single one, because that's going to happen, especially if you have big, audacious goals and you don't know how to get to them yet, but you know that they're there and your whole job is to figure it out. So you're going to have some times where you're not going to hit it. But if you take that goal and you move it over to another column that says personal development, and you've now identified that problem, that is a small win. And then the bigger win is if you figured out how to solve that problem and implement it in the next day or the next time period when you're addressing that. That way, like, not only have you hit those goals, but you've now identified problems. In those problems, you've now identified some solutions. That is a massive successful day, because people pay people a lot of money to be consultants. And what is their job? To go out and find problems.
Right. But you just said something that a lot of people might miss. See, a lot of people think that they need to know how to do something. Like, I needed to know how to swim underneath the water for the whole length of the pool. I didn't know how to do that. You practice doing that. When we have a goal, we don't know how we're going to get there. Because actually, if I know, and that's where we start peeling away the layers. If somebody says, well, I'm pretty certain I'll know how to double my income, then that's not the right one. It's that, okay, what small action step do I think I need to take today? And then at the end of the day, like you said, then how did I do? How did I do? And if we assess every 30 or 60 days, you shouldn't be doing the same things. Because if you're doing the same things, you're going to get the same results. So it really becomes, well, what did I do a little bit differently? What offshoot did I start trying? And it's going to come from what you just described as those days of, what do I think I need to do to get closer to this goal?
And I love how you delineated between what I would call goals and tactics. You know, a tactic is something where you know how to get there and you're just implementing a process. A goal is something that you might not understand on how to get there, but you're going to go through the process of understanding it. And that's how you know it's a good goal, because you don't know how to get there. It's not because you do, you just know it's the spot you need to be, and you got to figure it out. And, when Elon Musk, started, his SpaceX, he didn't know how to land a rocket. He crashed, hundreds of them, or maybe not hundreds, but quite a few of them. Could have been hundreds, I don't know. And so he crashed a lot of rockets, but in that process, it was a learning curve. And most people thought he was crazy. You're really going to go land a rocket after it shot into space? It's nuts, and it's never been done before. Perfect. That's a great goal.
The crazy ones are why we have all the inventions.
Yeah. And most people think you're crazy until you achieve it. Then they said, I believed in the whole way.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, when you're dealing with the leaders who might feel hesitant about setting big goals, and because when they set big goals, that's big expectation, the board's going to look at them and go, whoa, you didn't hit that big audacious goal. And how do they do that so that they can, overcome those self-esteem issues or a fight with the board?
Well, it's getting the board and them all aligned for the goal, for one. If you're not aligned, then it is going to be challenging, because if you're working towards a different objective, one person can change the company, but it's smoother. That's the word I'm going to use, if they're aligned with it. And if the leader is challenged with getting them to see the vision, there's a good question in there. Are they in fear and doubt and anxiety? Is the board worrying about the economy, and you and I chatted about that. The economy doesn't matter, but if they think that something external is going to happen, it's maybe time to change.
Absolutely. Yeah. Most people will externalize their challenges and their failures, but they'll internalize their successes and their achievements. And that's one of the hardest things where it comes to somebody really understanding agency for themselves, because they have to take ownership of both.
Or they don't know how to really embrace change. The story between Blockbuster and Netflix, which one is around? And oh, by the way, who wanted to buy who, and who said they didn't want to be bought, which was Blockbuster.
Yep. Blockbuster is so funny because it definitely has left one legacy: be kind, rewind. And at least we all remember that. At least those of us who, are a little bit then tenured, remember that one. But, we all also didn't like Blockbuster. Like, they'd always charge you with bad fees. Everybody was waiting for them to fall because you weren't never happy going into Blockbuster, because the staff generally weren't polite, and it was always an uncomfortable feeling. And then in comes Netflix. Yep. Smooth, easy, no problems. Just pay your monthly and you're good. And right, it wasn't only technology they wanted on the service side of things.
They were great at service and always have been.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when we talk about somebody focusing on, we talk about goals, and they wake up in the morning, they set their goals. Obviously, they're going to have a strategy about how they spend their time. And there's so many different ways people can figure out how to slice and dice time and try to make it work for them. What is your strategy? And when you look at, I know you talk about a 90-day plan to stay disciplined, with busy life around family and prioritization about those plus revenue. How do you guide clients to manage their time with efficiency?
Well, so the first thing is just we blow up this idea that you can manage time, because you can't. We all have the same amount of time, but what we can manage is the activities. And there's an old story, it's called the Ivy Lee story, going back to the days of Charlie Schwab in the Bethlehem Steel, where he was a consultant. And the essence of what it really boiled down to is write down 6 things that you need to do at the end of today. Write down the 6 things I need to do tomorrow towards the goal, not admin, not operations, like not all the normal minutia, but 6 items that I know are going to get me closer to the goal. And then what we do is at the very next morning, you start working on number 1. You also had to reorder them, because most people write down the first thing that they like to do, not necessarily the most important. So I ask them to reconfigure that. And sometimes we don't even get a half of a 1 done. But that keeps the consistency of the activities of what I need to work towards the goal. And then if we even want to dive down a little bit farther into how do we really manage the activities during the day, there is the Pomodoro method, which was apparently created by a gentleman for, I don't like labels, but for people with very active minds. That's what I'm going to say.
Yep.
And somebody taught this to me. My one daughter saw it. She knew what it was, but here's what it is. 25 minutes at the timer. If you have a challenge with your phone being near you, then you have to move the phone out of the room and close all the tabs. But whatever the activity is that you're going to work on, you have to work on it for 25 minutes. When the timer goes off, you actually have to stop and step away for 5 minutes. You can do that. I think it is 2 times in a row. If you do it more than that, you have to take a much longer break. And the research actually shows that if somebody uses that method every day, you'll be more productive than the average worker in a 40-hour work week.
It's interesting. When I think about how I work, and not saying the way I work is the way everybody else should work, I'm a do it till it gets done kind of a person. And I will sit for 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever's necessary, until that task is completed, and then it's done. But my mind is, if I don't do that, and if I take a break, I will look at the kitty and get on to the next thing. And so how do you juxtapose those two mindsets?
So a lot of us are distracted.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was distracted. What did you say?
I know. It's like, what's going on? And it just is. It's what's happened with technology and social media and all of that. On average, people aren't like you, where they can be very focused working on one. But what helps to understand the 5 minutes just is a 5-minute breather. Get up and go get a cup of coffee, unless you really will not move for those 2 hours. But it is just to pause and give your mind a rest. And some will go right back to the same task, but it's that break. It's always asked if somebody is a morning or a night person. It's a really interesting question. So I'm a morning person. I'm up at a crazy early hour. And if you asked me to do a task that was important at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it is going to be ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's also understanding the rhythm of a person. Just a lot of nuances in there.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think there's never one slice for everybody. I mean, I'm a very strange person too. I'm a morning person. I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I go to bed around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. And that's just how I work. And so many people tell me, and I guess time will tell, that I'm going to die young because, I don't get enough sleep and all these other things. And I function just fine. I'll train jujitsu in the morning. Tonight I'm going to train jujitsu. I'll work, till midnight. Now, I agree that there's certain times when you do things.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm going to have a difficult conversation, I'm going to have it first thing in the morning. I'm not going to have a difficult conversation at 10 o'clock at night. Just not going to happen. Never. Like I might cut off for difficult conversations probably about 8 o'clock because I know that afterwards, that's when the creative mind starts to go. And that's when usually if I'm doing something creative, I will do between 9 and 11 o'clock because I'm sort of in this almost dream state of operating at that point. And it works out great, but there's not one slice that's going to work for everybody.
No. And it's really important what you just said. It's almost like somebody believing that there's one answer for everything. Not one answer. Lots of answers.
Yeah. Well, there's tons. I mean, I've had people try to convince me I should be vegan and that, eating meat is so bad. And I'm like, well, maybe it's bad for you. It's not bad for me. And then I'll convince them that I'm actually a vegan and tell them, no, I'm actually a vegan. I just eat processed vegetables that comes in the form of a cow. And it's a naturally processed vegetable.
Right. They ate it.
So I'm vegan, just works out perfect. And you can tell I probably missed lunch today. Maybe, I don't know. No, actually I did have lunch. I had summer sausage for lunch. Really good vegetable. Should try it. It's very good. Yeah.
Trying to remember this now. This is pretty good.
Yeah.
A different delivery for the vegetable.
That's right. That's right. Everybody is a vegan, and here's why. When we look at time management, and I want to get back to that, and we talk about, I think Bob Proctor said, discipline is about giving yourself a command and following it up with action. What role did discipline play for you in the way that you managed? 3 adoptions plus running a business. What did discipline do in that role, and how can entrepreneurs apply this level of discipline that you had for their business?
That's a loaded question. So let's think about this. So when a person starts a business, especially an entrepreneur, they're wearing all the hats, like all the hats. All of a sudden now they're sales, marketing, advertising, onboarding, servicing, you name it. So the first priority becomes what's the most important to grow the business. And it usually is I need customers or clients and determine the fastest way you can do that. And then it should follow with what's the first hire I need to make. Because we should not think we can do this all on our own. And it is to understand your business. And a lot will get stuck in how do I move from the talent to the CEO. When we want to control everything, as a lot of entrepreneurs do, they want to control all avenues of the business. It takes a lot of work for them to really learn to bring in the talent to grow a business. It's why the first question is, how fast do you want to grow, or do you want to stagnate where you are? Because there's nothing wrong with a work-life balance. And we talked about this early on. There's lifestyle businesses. You can be your only employee and you can choose to work that way, which when I started, that's actually what I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like doing everything. So it's like, I should hire people to do the things I don't like to do, which lets me go talk to people because that's what I love doing. And I think it's get the help early on to even just have an idea of what the business is going to look like. That is the vision of the future. If I want a lifestyle business, that's a very different trajectory. But if I want an 8-figure business, very different.
Yeah. There's always gates that a business goes through. And, if I relate it to the real estate world, I mean, a real estate agent, when they come in, every real estate agent, when you ask them first starting, how much money do you want to make? They're like $100,000. You're like, that's not a business. That's a job. But, that's what they want. And then they get to that point. And then when they start getting to like that $250,000 mark, they start realizing, they're a couple late, and submitting some forms. They don't get the listing up right. Oh, I forgot to bring my staging stuff out. And they start dropping the ball on things because they're growing too fast and they don't have support. So then the first thing they got to do is hire somebody with support. But they can only do that if they have the right income. And so now they get past that threshold. They're up to maybe like $500,000. They got a couple, support people. Now they need talent out there who's going to help them show houses, who's going to help them list houses and do these things to get them up to $1 million. And each time they go through that gate, what they're doing is they're outsourcing or insourcing, depending on how you look at it, tasked within the business. And I think some people, what they do is they say, I want to outsource only the tasks I don't like to do. My personal belief is outsource the tasks to somebody who's better at doing them than you. Like whether you like doing it or don't like doing it, if they are better than you at doing it, you need to hire them because that's what the best ethics for your business.
Right. What you just described is, do they want to be a CEO of a business? Because that is very different. I worked with a company where they were not early stage, but early stage home roofing company. And it really had to be a decision. Do you want to grow? And like, what's the vision normally? And what I did with them is to think about what is your vision statement? Very different for that lifestyle or the vision of how you're going to be a business that's a great place for people to work, that allows growth and support for the employees. So whatever they're looking at, but to your point, they might like selling the roofing company. I told the CEO, you have to stop getting on the roofs. Like, pretty sure you're not paid to be standing on the roof doing a quote, but did he like doing it? Absolutely. It's also the same for somebody who likes selling. It's really challenging to give up those conversations.
It's so hard. And actually in real estate, that for me was the one that, I don't even think I've totally given up on that one. I still kind of, go into those. My mortgage business, I have a great team and they handle everything. I just pepper in as needed in my podcasting and business management systems business. That one, we have a great team who handles everything and I kind of just pepper in as needed. And it's interesting in each of those ones, I have no problem in delegating out everything except for the one. And I don't know why. And it's maybe because just deep down inside, I have like this like love, like, they call it like, it's like an addiction. Like real estate is like an addiction because I mean, when somebody's into real estate, they're sneaking off in their office. Maybe they're in the bathroom and they flip over their phone and they're at realtor.com and they're just looking at pictures of real estate and it's an addiction. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe real estate is just an addiction.
You just have a fondness for it.
I do. I really do. I love it. I love it so much. One of the things we're doing is we're pivoting it into the business brokering side of things. And that is a really cool direction that we're going as we build out our commercial division.
So you're finding the businesses for the buyers or helping them sell?
Both. Yeah, both. Okay. Yeah. And it's really exciting because it dovetails into so many things. And I think it's an awesome direction to go, especially, somebody who's in the consulting space like you're in. It's an amazing thing to look at because I know you go in and you help people and, sometimes they're They start off as the hobbypreneur, they move into the solopreneur, then they move into the entrepreneur, and then they move into that next phase, which is the investor. And, or they move into the exit.
Well, or like we have a friend who bought a business here. Oh gosh, has it been almost a year? About a year ago, because he wanted to be a business owner, and a 70-year-old was looking to retire. And the funniest things will come out of him. Like he didn't know what it was like to run a business because he had always been in the corporate world. And he didn't realize all the little nuances about managing 40 employees and running the business.
Very different. Yeah.
Whoa. Very different.
Very, very different. There's a lot of people who do massively well in the corporate world, and then they get into smaller business, and then there's shock and awe that happens because they're used to, I mean, you've got like a, $50 million marketing budget, and they're, they've got investors, so scads of cash all the time. There's no liquidity problems. And then you move into a small business where, Anne decides to get pregnant, and now she's off on mat leave, and that's your whole accounting department. And you've got to find a new accountant now, but you got to have her back when Anne comes back, because Anne's coming back and you want her back in the business. How do you handle that as a small business?
Yeah, it is always fun to watch people come from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur. It's, you can tell in the first 3 years where they'll end up.
Entrepreneur space is just so much fun. It is just, I don't know. Again, it goes down to, you can really discover who you are through the whole process.
Yep. You discover that we don't need other people to create a business, that you can be anything you want. Most will stay in a world that they have experience, whether it's marketing or any area within the corporate world. That's usually what they'll come out, like the sales coaches or the, fractional CFOs or the CMOs, because they liked it. They just didn't like being told what to do and who to work with.
Yeah. Well, then they get self-employed and you're still told what to do.
That's right.
And you still don't. Yeah, exactly. And you've got the nastiest boss on the planet, which is yourself. I think Dana White did a really good talk around the idea of most people who go to be self-employed, who fail, it's because they wanted to, be their own boss and set their own schedule. And if that's why you want to be self-employed, get ready for failure, buddy, because it ain't going to happen.
No, you got to put in the hours.
Yeah, you got to put in the time. That's for sure. Now, what's one thing that we haven't covered that you would think that, man, I really think this is important that we got to get out to the audience?
Well, there's way too many things to fill in the blank with that, but I'll leave it with this because it was something that was we were chatting about it this morning, is that if everyone just realized that doubt and worry impacts everyone, even CEOs have imposter syndrome, that bet on themselves and then do whatever it takes, because decisions is what's missing for most people. It's the ability to make a decision. I think Kenneth Blanchard said it best. When you're interested, you'll do what's convenient. And when you're committed, you'll do whatever it takes. I think if a person just looks at it that way, it's like the decision that this is what I'm doing no matter what, then you won't let the dream fade and you won't let the goal fade, because you will then do whatever it takes.
Yeah. The difference between interested and committed is a whole nother level of performance. And whether it's sports or business or in relationships, that there's such a gap in between those.
Because
for people to be able to.
Ones that conform, and I look at conform as staying in a job that maybe they don't love 100%, is actually they lack courage. And when you lack courage, then it's going to be a very, very unfulfilling life at the end.
Yeah, there's a scene in a movie, and I forget which movie it is. It's where Kevin Costner, is talking to this young buck, and this young fellow saying, like, I just can't, I don't know if I have the courage. I've got so much fear. And Kevin Costner says, courage, and I'll paraphrase, courage doesn't show up unless fear is present. And the fear always happens first. And then the courage shows up after, but you got to have the fear first.
Yep. Faith and fear are both invisible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But we believe them, just like we believe in air, because we believe in the outcomes.
Yep.
And there's so many people that are tied to an outcome that isn't actually real, but it has that perceived value. And that's worth way more than what they actually see or feel or have heard about, because it's got this heavy block that's inside them.
I would also just leave everyone with, they should always be working on themselves. And that could mean like taking a course, finding a mastermind, finding an accountability. And yes, does it involve also working with mentors and coaches? Absolutely. Because life didn't come with an instruction manual. Because if it did, I don't have it.
Well, you talked a little bit earlier about making a decision. And I think sometimes what happens when people go to make a decision, they don't realize that not making a decision is a decision.
It is a decision.
You know, so if you're saying, hey, look, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to think about going out and finding a coach, or I'm going to think about, going to the gym, or I'm going to think about whatever. And I'm just going to think about, well, that is a decision. Delaying is a decision. And there is a cost to that, because we can all look back at those moments in life where we've delayed a decision for years and years and years. Yeah. For me, it was going into jiu-jitsu. I started when I was 38. Could I imagine how far ahead I would be? I'm 48 now, 49, I guess, this month, but happy birthday to me. But if I would have started it when I was 20, that's a big regret to me. I mean, I don't have regrets. I just look back and say, that would have been great. And I just realize I have to make decisions faster. So if somebody's thinking about the idea of, shamelessly plugging going to the gym, jiu-jitsu, go do it. If somebody's thinking about like, I need a coach, I need somebody who can get me to where I'm going, because everybody needs a coach. Everybody does. You look at Michael Jordan, he's got a coach. You look at Gordon Ryan, he's got a coach. You look at Wayne Gretzky, he has a coach. Everybody has a coach. Tony Robbins has a coach.
Yes.
And so the idea is you've got to go out and make that decision to make that happen, because when you delay it, it's going to cost you something. You've got to know what that cost is and then make an analytical decision and move forward with it. And I know for people to move forward with you is to go to the Ellen Tyler coaching.com is the easiest way to find you, because if they're looking at somebody who really is going to dive in to getting them accountable and getting them into action to, build the right habits, to build the right beliefs, to find the right results, it's definitely good for them to connect with you and start a conversation.
Yep. We just get to kick them in the ass.
There you go. Love it. That's my favorite. I have a shirt that says, don't be a little biatch. And I wear that at the gym.
Yeah.
And when it comes to doing burpees or doing something hard and they're struggling and they're like, I can't do one more, I just point at the shirt and then they go do it.
Very true. Very true.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've had an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And man, it was fun going through that journey of mindset, of being able to set goals and really being able to measure time. Those are things that I find to be really enjoyable topics.
It was awesome. Awesome, Steve.
Thank you so much. And guys, this is the money. This is the mindset. This is the mentoring podcast. We'll see you on the next one.